Thank you for joining us for this week's message at Crosswind Church. If you have any questions about this message or about Crosswind Church, please visit us at www.crosswindchurch.net, or you can email us at info@crosswindchurch.net.
Well, good morning and happy weekend following the 4th of July. I hope everybody has all their fingers remaining and that sort of thing. My name is Jeremy. I'm the pastor here, and we're going to talk for just a little bit about what God has in store for us today. When I was a little boy, I was a lot like my children, a lot like you guys probably when you were little, in that I had some chores, some responsibilities that some things I had to do around the house. And Jody will tell you that my responsibilities were probably minimal compared to most. I mean, I had to do things like keep my room clean and stuff like that. I mowed the lawn. But one of the things that I had to do that I absolutely hated, the job that I absolutely hated most, was I had to do it about once a month. My dad would come to me and he would say, Jeremy, it's time for you to sweep out the garage. Absolutely hated it. So he would take both cars, pull them out of the garage. This is a big deal to me because for the first 10 years of my life, we didn't have a garage. We had like some covered parking, or in my grandparents' house we just parked outside. There was no garage. So the fact we had a garage was pretty cool. We had a house attached to our house that our cars got to live in. Like that was pretty neat. And so Dad would back the cars out and he would give me a push broom and he would tell me I had to sweep the garage. I absolutely hated it. I don't know why. Like Dad worked on the farm, and so there was always dirt and leaves and cow manure, whatever it was that Dad had drove through during the last month. It would find its way into our garage, and spiders and spider webs and all that stuff. And so I would just get the broom and I would push it out. It would take me forever. I may or may not have muttered bad things about my dad under my breath. Like I absolutely hated sweeping out the garage. And it didn't take very long. It wasn't something that was overly tedious, but for whatever reason, it was just a bad chore. Then something happened. After Jody and I got married and she got hired at a school to teach and I took my first full-time ministry position, we bought a house. And the house that we bought also had another house attached to it that our cars got to live in. It also had a garage. And so I can remember we had been living there for a few months. We were awaiting the birth of Emma, and we pulled into the car, into the garage one weekend, and I got out and I looked around and I realized that my garage was a mess. It was dirty, it was nasty, it was absolutely terrible. And so I said to Jody, you go do whatever you got to do. It was probably a weekend day. I don't remember exactly all of the details, but you go do what you're going to do. And I backed both cars out of the garage, and I went and I found a push broom, and I began to do something I never thought I would do on my own accord. I swept out my own garage. Now here's the weird thing about it. I enjoyed it. In fact, if you were to talk to me right now, if you were to go in my garage right now, it's a mess. But I absolutely, whenever Jody gives me an opportunity to go out and clean out my garage, whenever I get an opportunity to go straighten things out, sweep it out, now I've bought a leaf blower, so I just blow it out, like it's incredible. Like, I love going and straightening up, cleaning up, sweeping my garage. It was such a transition in mindset for me that the first time I realized that I was enjoying doing this particular duty, I called my dad. It was like, you'll never guess what I'm doing, and actually love doing it. You see, the thing was, the job didn't change. The amount of time it took me to do it didn't change. But what changed was my perspective. What changed was a shift in the way that I viewed it. No longer was it something I was doing for someone else. Something that was being forced upon me. Now it was something that I was doing because I had ownership of it. Now, here's the thing. If you're here today and maybe you're not a follower of Jesus and you haven't decided on whether or not you believe everything the Bible has to say, and you kind of stumbled across me because maybe you thought we might be just a little bit different. Let me just go ahead and say I'm really, really excited that you're here today. Because today we're going to begin a series, a group of messages where we talk about something that's so pivotal to what we do here at Crosswind, so pivotal to who God has called us to be. And I think it's important that you get to hear it. And you get to see. You see, at Crosswind, what we say all the time, we have a little saying, and it's a silly saying, and it's kind of cheesy, and I get it, but it's ours nonetheless, right? We say all the time, Matt's already said it once today, that life with Jesus is better. Life with Jesus is better. What we mean by that is, first of all, we don't mean that when you follow Jesus, He'll make you healthy, wealthy, wise, and beautiful. It's not what we're saying. What we are saying is that life done with Jesus is a lot better than life done without Jesus. And today, we get to begin to talk about one of those reasons why. So I'm so glad you're here, because sometimes as Christians, we can get kind of confused about some things. Sometimes it's real easy for us to kind of misplace our focus. And today, I want to try to refocus something that we misplaced a really long time ago. See, when the early church was formed, when Jesus died, rose from the dead, and ascended into heaven, the followers of Jesus, they weren't even called Christians then. They were called followers of the way, or disciples of Jesus. They began to kind of meet, and they got to begin to gather around one another and support one another, and pray for one another, and hear what it was that Jesus had to say. The word that we use in the Bible when we read it to describe that is we say that they were the church. But the Greek word that was originally written in, the language that was originally written was Greek, it's actually the word ecclesia. Which is not one word, but two words. It's a compound word. Ek means out of, kaleo, which means called. Literally means the called out ones. They would have meant it to be gathering or a congregation, those people that were separate from everyone else, this gathering, this group of people. That was what the early church was. And rightfully so. They were persecuted. They were driven a lot of times into seclusion, into underground worship of God. They were in some cases put to death or in prison. In other cases, they were allowed to worship, but they had very limited freedoms. And for 300 years after the resurrection of Jesus, that's how the church functioned and operated. But around 300 AD, something changed. The new emperor of Rome, named Constantine, he was battling to kind of unify all of the Roman Empire. In the middle of one of his battles, he had a dream. And that dream converted him, in his mind, to Christianity. Constantine then went and he legalized Christianity. He ended the persecution of Christianity. And within 70 years or so after that moment, Christianity was not just legal, it was the official religion of the Roman Empire. That sounds amazing. But let me tell you what happened. See, in that moment, there was a shift that occurred. In that 100 years or so, there was a shift that began. What Constantine does when he makes it legal is now all of a sudden churches are pulled out of their homes, the gatherings are pulled out of their small groups that were kind of focused on community and taking care of one another, learning of the disciples' teachings, and now we move them into big buildings called cathedrals. The church stopped being about a gathering and started being about an institution. The church stopped being about a relationship with Jesus and it started to be about religious practices. This is not to say that buildings are bad or big churches are bad or that religion is bad. That's not it. But this little subtle shift changed the way that we interact with God. See, I think that, there's a lot of debate as far as what Constantine was trying to accomplish when he legalized religion. I think Constantine understood something. I think he understood that if I can control people's religion, I can control people. And the way that religions had worked for millennia before and they've worked for millennia after that is if you have a holy book that's taught in a holy place, that's controlled by a holy man, then ultimately you have to go to the place and hear the man read the book in order have a right relationship with God. So if I can control the place, and I can control the book, if I can put it in a language they can't read, if I can control those two things, then guess what? I can control the people. And for 1,200 years, that's the way the church functioned. For 1,200 years, that was bred into people and taught to people that in order to be okay with God, I have to be okay with the church. In order to be okay with God, I have to go to this building. In order to be okay with God, I have to go 3 times a week and hear some man that's old talk to me for 3 hours about something that I don't even understand because I can't even read the book. 1,200 years. That was the system. That was the shift that had occurred. And then in 1517, a man by the name of Martin Luther came along. He started what's called the Protestant Reformation. And Martin Luther took the Bible and he translated it into a language that the common person could understand. And he put the book back in the hands of people. But y'all, the damage had already been done. The shift had already occurred. It's a shift, by the way, that we can see today. if we just pause and look, shift that I think is best illustrated in the way that churches talk about church membership. Now, before you get mad and send me emails, or before you misunderstand me, let me make sure I understand. I think you should be a member of a church. I think you should be committed and devoted to give and to serve and to do. I think you should be encouraged by one another. Corporate worship is an important thing. I'm not in any way trying to discredit your participation in local church worship. That's not what I'm trying to get at. What I am trying to say is this. When we start talking about church membership, it means something different to us. See, when I was a little boy, American Express, the credit card, you remember? They ran some commercials. They coined their own little silly phrase, right? Because you had to pay money to get an American Express card and that sort of thing. And so what they would say is this: membership with American Express, membership, it has its privileges. We talk about that with church life too, don't we? I become a member of that church, and what we really mean is, well, now I have the privileges that come with being a member of that church. For some means I get a key when I pass through my new member orientation. Here's your key to the church, and here's your pamphlet of all the programs that we have to offer, right? Or now when I want to have a birthday party or a wedding, or if I want to use the building for whatever, I can come and go as I please. It's free. That's a privilege that I have. It changed the way that we looked for churches, didn't it? I want to go to a church that has the programming that I want, at the times I want it, when I want it, because it's all about now consuming something from the church. With me, it's all about what the church has to give me, because I'm going to be a member. Membership has its privileges, right? And then when the time comes for us to actually have an interaction with God, we feel like we can't even do it on our own. We got to go to the building. We got to listen to the band. Teach us something that we don't have any responsibility for that at all. All we want is for somebody to kind of feed us, and we want to consume. This is, can I just be honest with you, this is one of the major reasons why children's and student ministries fail in most churches today. It's because the student and children's ministry has become more about what that ministry can do for my children. So as parents, we pass the bucket of responsibility for their discipleship for our children off to a program that gets to talk to them for an hour a week, if not maybe just a little bit more. And at home, we shun that responsibility because we go to a church where there's a privilege that we have. Something that comes because we're members there and attend. It's left over. It's left over from 2,000 years of church history. In fact, some of you guys have pushed away from church because of this. So you pushed away saying, look, all they want to do is control me and control my money. All they want to do is get me in, and all I am is a number, and all I am is a booty in the seats, or whatever it is. You say, like, listen, I get it. We talk like it. Some of you guys have pushed away and pushed back, but here's the thing that I want to talk to you about for the next few weeks. What if that's not what it's supposed to be like? What if that's not the way that the church was designed or founded? What if the shift that took place in our mind, it could be reversed? What if we could just all of a sudden move into something that was different, that was better? Because here's the thing, when we push back because of what the church has become, I get that. What if there was more? I think there is, in fact, more. That is one of the reasons why I think that life with Jesus is better. Sometimes it's easy to get confused. So today we're going to get a little bit of help from a guy named Peter. Peter was one of Jesus' 12 disciples. More than that, Peter was one of 3 main disciples that hung out with Jesus quite a bit. He was one of those individuals that got to experience more than the others, and hear more than the others, and see more than the others. In fact, Peter got a new name when he began following Jesus. It was Simon. And then when he started following Jesus, Jesus said, I'm not going to call you Simon, I'm going to call you Peter, which is a little Greek word for rock. And if you read the story of Peter, you kind of wonder why it's called the rock, because Peter gets as confused sometimes as we do. Like, Peter doesn't understand things just like we don't understand things sometimes. And so I think it's kind of neat that we're actually going to read some from a letter that Peter wrote today, because Peter often got confused about some of these things as well. But 30 years after Jesus rose from the dead, Peter would write a letter to a group of churches that were in Asia Minor. They were kind of confused as well. They were kind of struggling as well. Their idea of what it looked like to follow God had also gone through a shift. You see, the church there in Asia Minor, the churches that Peter was writing to, they had started out primarily Jewish. Remember, Jesus was a Jewish Messiah. Christianity came out of Judaism. Okay? And so they were primarily Jewish, but as time moved on, 30 years now past the resurrection, the church was largely Gentile. The number of Gentiles in the church had grown. Gentiles were just non-Jews. And so the Gentiles were kind of wrestling because the Jews, they had this relationship with God already. They were God's chosen people. They had this system in place already. And so the Gentiles were kind of struggling. Where do I fit in? And how do I fit in? And what exactly is my role? And what does my relationship with God look like? And some of them had kind of wandered down the pathway into sin. And as Paul begins to address this, as Peter begins to address this in this letter, 1 Peter, in chapter 2, he begins to call them back to what it is that they were originally called to be. And we're going to read just 2 verses. We're going to go through those really quickly, and then we're going to see what kind of application it is for us. Look at 1 Peter chapter 2. We're going to start reading in verse 9. If you have a Bible, you can turn there. If not, you can follow along on the screen with us. We'll put all the words up there. We're going to read a little bit, and we're going to talk a little bit. First he says, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood." Let's stop right here because there's a couple things that I want to make sure we get. That little word "you" in the English, we don't pick up on this when we read it in English, but to the original readers it would have been very clear. This word is plural. It is a plural "you." We would say it this way in Tennessee: y'all, right? We mean all of you. Here, this is why this is so important. He doesn't say, hey, the building is chosen. That's not what he says. He doesn't say the programming is chosen. He says you, all. Now, what that means is that whether you're Jew, whether you're Gentile, whether your background is one that's checkered or struggles, or whether you grew up in the Jewish system of temple sacrifices, whatever that system may be, you all, and he says this, are a chosen people. This is so big, don't miss this. So up to this point, the chosen people had been the nation of Israel. In fact, up to this point, we can go back to Genesis chapter 12, the story of how the Hebrew nation began, and we can see God looking at Abraham and going, you have been chosen, and a nation is going to come from you, and they're going to be my people, and I'm going to be their God. And so the Jews carried this swagger with them all throughout history of, hey, we're special to God. We're God's chosen people. Can you imagine then what that must feel like when Jesus comes in and offers salvation to both Jew and Gentile alike, and Gentiles are in the church and they're going, yeah, I get that Jesus has saved us, but where does that put me? Because the Jews are God's chosen people. Where am I going to fit in? And what Peter is saying is this, look guys, Jesus shifted the relationship. He shifted. Now, the Jews are God's chosen people, but now, through Jesus Christ, you have a new position. You have been chosen. You are the chosen people. You all, not just the Jews, not just the Gentiles, not just the good, not just those that are saved up, or prayed up, not just those who have made the right sacrifices, not just those that have avoided the right means, not just those that have had an operation. You all, through Christ, are a chosen people. This is such a big deal. When Jody and I moved to Union City, we decided that we wanted to get a dog for our girls, a little puppy. We had had a mishap with our previous puppy that involved a vehicle on Herman Carter Road, and so we needed to remedy that situation. So we decided we were going to get a puppy. And my wife did some research. She found breeders, and she researched breeds, and this is the type of dog that we want, and this is somebody that has those types of dogs. And so she got some friends and girls, and they went over to this woman's house where she was breeding these puppies, and they began to kind of look around, and there they saw our dog. There they saw Princess. Okay? We are a house that has a lot of women in it, and the dog is named Princess as well. Sometimes I just have to go out into my garage and like grunt and stuff because I just need that. Anyway, They saw Princess. And the thing was is this, listen, there were some issues. Princess had some medical issues that maybe needed to be taken care of. Maybe they didn't have to. We're going to have to go to bed as soon as we get her. And she was expensive, y'all. There was like money that was like a check that was going to have to be written because this particular breed was kind of a popular breed and all kinds of people wanted this breed of dog. But here's the thing, is that Princess never promised to pay that money back to us. Princess never promised to not cause us to have to deal with all of her medical conditions and all of her weirdness and all of that stuff that comes with that. But here's what we did. Look, we looked down in a litter of puppies and we went, that's our dog. We chose her. She couldn't have chosen us. She didn't know who we were at that moment at all in the world. You tracking with me? Now here's the thing. She hadn't done anything to earn us choosing her, but nonetheless we chose her because we saw her and we loved her. Now here's the thing that I want you to understand. You weren't good enough for God to choose you as a people. You haven't earned His favor. You couldn't pay back the grace that He is pouring out on you. Yet God, in His love for you and in His sovereignty, looked down and chose you as a people. That's remarkable. That's amazing. And sometimes we get caught up in weird debates and discussions about fairness, and I understand all of that, but I'm telling you, Him choosing you was not fair. Praise God, it wasn't fair. You are a chosen people. God caused there to be a shift through Jesus Christ. He goes on. He says, you are a royal priesthood. Now that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to us, especially in this tradition of faith, because we don't have priests. But to the Jews, this would have been a big deal because they came out of a system of priests and prophets. Let me explain what that means. See, a prophet was an individual that mediated between God and man. A prophet was an individual that got a word from God and then communicated that to the people. He was an intercessor from God to the person. You understand that? The priest was the other way around. The priest interceded on behalf of the people. The people came to the priest interceded on behalf of the people, and he served as an intermediary between God and man. With me, that's what the priest did. So, when the people of Israel wanted to get on good terms with God, when they wanted to offer sacrifices to God, when they wanted to worship to God, guess what they had to do? They had to go to the priest. The priest was the one that would declare them clean or unclean. The priest is the one that would enter into the Holy of Holies and sprinkle the blood on the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant as an atoning sacrifice for the sins of the people. The priest is the one that would prepare the sacrifices, prepare the offerings. The priest is the one that managed the temple and managed the tabernacle and managed the synagogue. The priests were the one that were responsible for people's worship of God. You with me? Now, what Jesus does is He shifts the roles. And He takes you from laity and He makes you a priest. And He says, now all of a sudden, because of Jesus, the priest is not necessary. If you want to go to God, you go to God because you have that inside you. You are a royal priest. This is a big deal. So much so the writer of Hebrews would put it this way in Hebrews chapter 4. He would say that we have a high priest named Jesus who can empathize with us and sympathize with us in every way because He has been tempted in every way, yet He's without sin. And He intercedes on our behalf to our Heavenly Father. But we, through Jesus now, because of Jesus, we can pray directly to God. So therefore we should enter into the Holy of Holies, He said. We shouldn't rely on a priesthood. We should enter into the Holy of Holies, and we should offer our prayers to God with boldness. Why? Because you have been shifted from laity to priest, from laity to clergy. Now you need no intermediary. Now it's you. You have responsibility to do that. Kids, I just think this is one of the things that we really struggle with in our modern times. I can remember a young lady named Mary. It was one of the most remarkable stories that I'd ever heard. Mary grew up in church and grew up going to Sunday school and vacation Bible school and all those things, and yet she had kind of hit some bad luck and made some bad decisions and had kind of fallen out of going to church. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes we know people that have done that. And Mary was kind of coming back and kind of getting her feet wet again. And she came one day to me and sit in my office. It was a Thursday. I'll tell you why I know that. It was a Thursday, and she was sitting in my office. She was talking to me about her relationship with God. And she had said, Jeremy, I don't think that I have one. Like, I don't think that I've really committed my life to follow Jesus. So whenever someone asks me that question, tells me that, I kind of want to know more information. She says, well, Mary, tell me, why would you think that you weren't a follower of Jesus? And she said, well, I've said that prayer in that Bible there. She pointed my Bible. I've said that prayer in that Bible a million times. And I've been baptized, and I've been all that stuff. I said, what prayer in the Bible are you talking about? She's like, that sinner's prayer. Mary, that's a fine prayer. It's not in the Bible. Like, you didn't read that in the Bible. Like, somebody told you that. Well, why did they tell me this? That's not, I was like, listen, I don't know. But I'm just telling you, like, there are prayers in the Bible, but that's not one of them. Right? So like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, I've done all the right things, and I've said all the right things, but Jeremy, I just know that I haven't committed my life to Jesus. I know that I haven't turned it over to Him. The song we sang, she could have said, I know I haven't surrendered it all to Him. And I know that if I were to die right now, I would go to hell. I said, well, Mary, if that's the case, what's stopping you from giving your life to Jesus? She said, I don't know, but I just don't think I'm ready. For whatever reason, I just don't want to. Like, maybe there's things I don't want to give up, or maybe there's just a fear. I don't know. I'm not ready to do it. And I said, well, Mary, I could sit here and talk you into it, and I could manipulate you and try to get you to do it. But unless you're ready, then we have to be done with this conversation here, because I'm not going to coerce you to make a decision you're not ready to make. She said, but if I get hit by a car and die and go into hell, and I was like, well, yeah. I'm sorry. That's what the Bible's like. Yeah, I'm sorry. Apart from Jesus Christ, there is no salvation. She was like, well, okay. I think I'll just leave. I said, well, it's fine, Mary. I'll pray for her. I gave her my number. I said, Jody and I the family, we're driving up to Hopkinsville to see my dad for the weekend. We were going to leave Thursday night after school and come back Saturday in time for church. I said, listen, if you need to talk, you can call me. You can call me anytime. We got in the car. Jody was driving, and we were about in Huntsville. We were in North Alabama, leaving Alabama, and the phone rings, and it's Mary. It's Thursday night. It's dark outside. Jody was driving, and I answer the phone, and I go, hey, Mary, what's going on? She said, I'm ready. And I was like, excuse me? She's like, I'm ready. Right, I want to give my life to Jesus. I'm telling you, I'm committed. This is it. This is for real. I know that this is the case. I'll meet you in your office Sunday morning, and you can do the deal. What? Yeah. I'll meet you in your office, and you can pray, and pray for me, and pray with me, and God will save me then. And I was like, Mary, you don't have to do that. Like, listen, it's not about the words in your mouth as much as it is the position, the attitude of your heart. Mary, I'm telling you, we can say a whole bunch of prayers you already have. That's not going to change anything. If your heart is ready, you can commit your life to Jesus right now, and we can talk about it on the phone, or Mary, you don't even need me. Like this is between you and Jesus. She's like, I just feel like you have to be there. Come on, you chuckle. But don't we often do that? Somebody wants to know how to give their life to Jesus, and we go, you should go talk to the pastor. You should go talk to somebody that's qualified. Now listen, I'm here, our staff is here. We want to encourage you. We want you to ask questions. We want you to ask hard questions. We want you to ask questions about what you're struggling with. We want to come and help you and encourage you and equip you and do what the Bible has called us to do as your staff. But I'm telling you, you don't need me to pray to God. You don't need me to enter into a relationship with God. You are a royal priest. And let me tell you, that shifts everything. It shifts everything. To a personal relationship with you. I'll move on because we've got to go really, really fast. He goes on and he says this. He says that you are a holy nation, God's special possession. I love that phrase. Think about special possessions that my kids have. I won't embarrass them. Those little stuffed animals, those little blankets, those little things that they sleep with, that they'll probably end up taking with them to college. How they value those. I think about how I could mess with a number of things of my daughters, but if I took one of their special possessions, there would be war in my house. It wouldn't matter if I was daddy or not. I think about how that's how God is. You ever felt like you just didn't matter? You ever felt like you weren't ever going to make an impact, you weren't ever going to make a difference? I'm just going to be honest with you. I think that is my biggest struggle. Me personally. The thought that I'll never be good enough to belong I'll always be on the outside looking in, that I'll never do anything of lasting significance. Like, if I think about it, it'll make me all depressed and mushy. But I wonder if you've ever felt like you don't matter. Like you'll never be good enough. Maybe it's because you can't overcome that hurdle and make the honor roll at school, or no matter how hard you try, you're just not going to pass that class. No matter how many pitching lessons or batting lessons or throwing lessons or whatever it is you go to, you're never going to be able to make the team. You're always going to be on the outside. You're always going to be left out. You're going to be the leftovers. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt like, man, I'm so small and I'm so insignificant and nothing will ever come of me or my life? Can I tell you, I feel that. I struggle with that. I know some of you do as well. Here's the thing. You ready for this? You are not a nobody. You are not a leftover. You are God's prized possession. He's shifted your role from that of nobody to that of adopted child of the King of Kings. He's shifted your role out of darkness and into light. He's shifted your role out of the bondage of sin into the freedom of His grace. He's shifted your role from laity to clergy. He's made you a royal priest. He's called you a chosen nation. I'm telling you, people, when I hold such a negative view of myself, I'm speaking such negative things about what God believes about me because He believes these things about me. And He doesn't just believe them, they're true. He made me that way. Here's the thing. When we are able to shift our focus back and stop relying upon a holy book and a holy person and a holy church, a holy building, whatever it is, to mediate our relationship with God, when we shift and we realize that it's about a personal relationship that He's called me into and that He holds me so dear that somehow He holds my prayers. This is from the book of Revelation. Somehow He holds my prayers in golden bowls in heaven. I have no clue how He does that, but that's how precious they are to me. We shift that like this. Now we can be the church that God intended us to be. Now we can be people God has intended us to be. When we shift our focus back and we recognize that we have something more than just membership. He has transitioned us, shifted us from membership to ownership. Members have privileges. Owners, they have responsibilities. See, Jody and I first moved into a house in Fort Worth. It was a rental house. One night, her parents were there visiting with us. We gave them a master bed. We slept on a futon in our guest bedroom, which was roughly the size of the men's bathroom in here. It's tiny. In the middle of the night, there was this loud crash. We shot straight up in bed. Someone outside had thrown a rock through the window right above our head. We at the time had a dog that was sleeping in the bed with us, never woke up. But it was a rental house, right? It was a rental house. It wasn't my house, it was a rental house. So what I did is I called the landlord. And I went, hey, it's 3 a.m. There's a hole in our window. Like, we got to do something about it. Like, I'm going to put a tarp over it and go back to sleep. You should call a window guy. Right? Because that needs to be fixed. We can't live in here because it's Texas and it's really, really hot. A couple years later, we had moved into a home that we owned. We moved in December. Her parents came to visit again. It had been a particularly cold night in Texas, which are few and far between. We went in, woke up the next day, and we were going about our routine. We walked in to do laundry in our laundry room, and we turned the washing machine on, and nothing happened. Overnight, somehow, in the state of Texas, our pipes froze in the wall. I went into full-blown panic mode. I got in the car, I drove to Walmart, I bought space heaters, put it on the wall, right? I went outside and covered those pipes, took a hairdryer. I took a hairdryer and extension cord outside and it sat there and tried to thaw it out. And the reason I did all that, the reason I did it is because I was an owner of that house and I had a responsibility to take care of that house. When you're renting the house, you have no responsibility. But Jesus has taken us from a rental mentality and He's placed us in an ownership mentality. You are not members at Crosswind Church. You are owners at Crosswind Church. Members have privileges. Owners have responsibility. Later on, in the same verse, Peter was going to say to us, now you have a responsibility to declare the praises of the one that has taken you out of darkness into the light. Now you have a responsibility to do the ministry. You have a responsibility to tell your friends about Jesus. You have a responsibility to disciple your children. You have a responsibility to grow in your relationship with Jesus Christ. Yes, the church is there to encourage you. Yes, the church is there to equip you. Yes, the church is there to inspire you, hopefully. But I'm telling you right now, you're not called to declare the greatness of your church. You're called to declare the greatness of the one who saved you. And when we mix those things up, we'll never be able to be the church that God inspires us to be. But if we're able to make that shift from darkness to light, shift from laity to clergy, we can be a church that God can change the world through. If that's what He's called us to do. When we wrap our heads around this and we make that shift, can I just tell you, it changes the way you view everything. It changes the way you view your money. It changes the way you view your time. It changes the way that you view your talents. It changes the way you view your resources. It changes the way you view other people. It changes the way you interact with people. It changes the way you interact with your family. It changes everything. When we recognize that we have not been called to be served, but to serve, when we do that, it changes everything. If you want to know how it changes, if you want to know how that perspective shifts, then you have to come back next week. Week after that. Because that's what we're going to be talking about. How God can shift our perspective. How God desires us to shift our perspective. As we close, I just want to ask you one question as we wrap this up. What are the areas of your life where you've been more of a consumer than an owner? What are the areas of your life where it's all about what I can get rather than what I can do? What are the areas of your life where you're stuck in this, I need a holy man and a holy place in order to have a right relationship with God? Where is that you're stuck in that? And what will it take to shift you to what God really intended? Because you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's prized possession. That calls us to responsibility. Because members have privileges. Owners, they have responsibilities. Let me pray for this. God, I thank you so much for what it is you've done. And God, I'm just going to be honest, I struggle a lot with this. I struggle personally. I sometimes don't know how I fit or what it is you're asking me to do. God, I know the responsibilities. There's times where I don't like them. God, I'm all over the map when it comes to the truth that you have for us today. But God, I know what your word says is true. And I know that you have called us to be different. You've called us into a relationship with you. And religion is good, but only as much as it points us to you. Church buildings are good, but only as they're a tool to draw people to you. God, I pray that you would begin to shift our focus back from a be served mentality to one that takes ownership and responsibility for the salvation that you've given us. And God, as we begin to explore this topic in our own minds and our own hearts this week, I pray that you would begin to move in such a way that we would acknowledge our ownership and take that responsibility and recognize, God, that it's something that you've given to us as a privilege. Help me to recognize that you have placed me here with a plan in mind to proclaim your gospel, to proclaim your truth, to tell my friends about the one who has shifted my position, my role. God, thank you for doing that in my life. Thank you for doing that in the lives of so many that are here. God, I pray that you would do it in the lives of many more. I pray that as we begin to shift our focus, that our community would notice that. They want what it is that we have. I pray that we begin to shift our focus, that our nation would begin to recognize what's going on in Northwest Tennessee. That they also would understand that you are calling us into a relationship with you as a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. Thank you for that. Now, God, empower us. Fill us with your Spirit that we might do the things that you've asked us to do here today as we evaluate our own lives and our own relationship with you. I love you. Trust you. Praise you.